Jessica Baum is a licensed mental health counselor. She is the founder of the Relationship Institute of South Beach. Her newest book is Safe: Coming Home to Yourself and Others. Welcome back to the show, Jessica.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you back on. Tell us a little about your personal lives, more about your work, and what motivated you to write the new book.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, I have a private practice, the Relationship Institute of Palm Beach, and I have a first book out, which is Anxiously Attached, which I wrote 3 years ago on attachment theory, and everyone loves that book. And it's done so well in the world. And through my own personal healing, I'm pretty vulnerable as a professional, and through my own studies of interpersonal neurobiology, I wanted to write the book that people needed for all attachment healing and to dive deeper into attachment theory to help people like really get the information that they need in order to kind of overcome these struggles. So it's a deeper dive, this next book. It's called Safe, an attachment informed guide to building more secure relationships. And I really, for those of you who are interested in attachment or just starting to understand attachment, I mean, you get attachment from the inside out. Like, what happens when you're a baby? How do you develop these patterns? How do they show up in your adult relationships? And most importantly, how do you shift from insecurity to security?
Well, that's all of value, certainly.
Yes.
Is it known how many of us are insecure in our relationships? Most, few?
Yeah, I mean, I think that over 50% of the population, probably 60% of the population struggle with some form of attachment insecurity. I mean, part of the reason why I wanted to write the books in general is because when I started to understand attachment on a deeper level, I'm like, so many of us are struggling in this way, and our behaviors are seeming disproportionate or out of control, or there's a lot of things we are sabotaging, and we're just not really understanding what's at the root. And there's a lot of suffering at the hands of attachment wounds. And so, healing is a lot of work, but I also think not healing and staying stuck in these patterns is really, really can be really traumatic and hard. So getting conscious and healing is the way out.
Yeah, I can either suffer through the pain of just not good relationships or suffer through the pain of doing the work and healing.
Yeah, and a lot of people, they'll repeat. So they'll say, "Oh, it's easier for me to just step into a new relationship and maybe this person will be different." And it might be different, but our patterns and our core wounds usually show up again. So we can think, "Okay, if I pick a partner who's like this, I won't get left, or if I pick a partner who's like this, maybe I'll save myself." But our deep insecurities tend to manifest and tend to get recreated over and over until we become conscious of them. And so that's why every relationship, and with the use of the book, it's a portal in to where these started and how to get conscious and become aware of memory and how memory lives in our body and how we miserably or unconsciously repeat things until we kind of can start to heal them, which is a lot of work. But so I can I but that's what I wanted to offer people, is a pathway out and a real scientific understanding. Like, I really dive deep into the neuroscience.
So much important stuff there. So if I have deep insecurities that stem from these attachment wounds, these core wounds, I am hopeful that the next relationship will work because that person will give me the things that I haven't been receiving, which hopefully that happens. I can't imagine it seems like that would take really a lot of luck to find the right person. But I hope that that's the case. But from my experience, it seems like deep insecurity will absolutely prevent that. But
Yeah, and so
will
like
deep
with well, early wounding, we tend to meet a partner, and in the beginning, it feels like they're meeting all of our needs. And we can even project like that this person will never feel alone and they're so wonderful, and we can project our unmet needs being met by that person. And that happens in the early stages of a lot of relationships. And the earlier the wound, typically the more fantasy around what needs are going to get met. And later, as the relationship unfolds, usually that other person isn't maintaining the perfect behavior or the unmet need. And so conflict starts to show up, and we start to think, oh my God, this person that made me feel this way in the beginning and was so wonderful and now is making me feel this way, right? And there's so many layers, and maybe they are doing behaviors that are not acceptable, but also the way that you're feeling later on tends to have earlier roots. So they're bringing up feelings that already existed within you. So that's where the conscious awareness starts to come into play. So whenever we think, oh, our partner is the solution, we got to be really careful with that. I mean, they are partners are how we heal in healthy relationships, and they also bring up our wounds. So if you think that they're going to save you from their wounds, you're usually setting yourself up for a little bit of disappointment down the road.
It seems to me that that would be the case. It's really interesting. The earlier the traumatic experience happened, the tell I perceive that I can get that fixed earlier on in the relationship, or
No, I think the earlier the wound, so like if you have like more narcissistic type wounds or earlier wounds, you form like more of a bubble in the beginning and you project that all your unmet needs are going to get met by this perfect partner and you put them on a pedestal. And so it's an adaptive way to bond. It's not necessarily bad. The problem is no partner can like maintain that kind of, perfection, and then you fall off the pedestal. So earlier wounds tend to be built a little bit more around fantasy. I talk about that in the book. And healthier relationships are a little bit more grounded in reality and not having like the perfect partner kind of save us or rescue us, which can be a hard thing to grieve if that's a way that you've escaped your own pain.
so I've always my very very basic non-scientific understanding of trauma that leads to negative or limiting beliefs. Um, and I work in personal finance, so I think about it in terms of I grew up in a household where there wasn't a lot of money or people thought about it, and so that's mapped onto my adult life.
Mhm.
Do stuff like that just you mentioned that earlier it happened. So if I had a bad experience that I don't even remember as a baby versus as a 7-year old, how does that time range? It sounds like that really matters.
Yeah, that really matters. So when we are in womb to about 4, we store something called implicit memory. And I talk about this in the book. So we store everything through sensation. We actually don't have the ability to store memory like a movie in our head. So if we're not being well received, and if our parents are stressed out all the time, and if they're not attending to us in certain ways, and I dive into the nuances of that, our nervous system picks up on that on a sensual level, like a level where we're storing that information in our body. And the climate in which we are born into becomes like our paradigm, and the way in which we learn whether we are safe or not safe in relationship, how to get close to people. Our nervous system registers these things. So our earliest experiences, I remember being really like a long time ago in my field, and I was like, yeah, those things don't matter. Oh my God, when you really start to understand the science, it's like, all of that matters so much. We're so vulnerable and we need such warm connection and we need attunement and we need all those things. And when we don't get those, we develop different adaptive strategies to survive and to stay in connection. And those adaptive strategies end up showing up later in our adult relationships. We carry them with us. But those early years where we're really just sensing a lot imprint us, and they imprint us in a big way. And so that's why some people have a hard time getting close. That's sometimes why we have an abandonment wound that we know about. Like those, and a lot of people who come to me, they're like, no, my parents were great. It literally means that if your mom was just stressed out and her nervous system was anxious, your system picked out that she wasn't in connection with you enough and you became anxious. It's literally that simple. It's not that we have bad parents or ill-willed parents. It's we're kind of absorbing so much at that early age. So you're absolutely right. The earlier, the bigger the impact. Around 7 or 8, we start to have more explicit memory, so things start to shift. Tend to have a less of an impact, but big events can impact us all the time. And when you're talking about trauma, it's actually little events that happen that we don't get to process over and over. So if you have a parent that ignored you over and over again, or a parent who was hysterical over and over again. Those are the things that start to impact your nervous system and kind of, and like you said, core beliefs around money, core beliefs around everything, even if they're not said overtly, if they're said covertly, they're passed into us. And we grow up with those core beliefs, we internalize them, and we have to work hard to change that.
That's really interesting. Implicit memory, 0 to 4, how it sort of imprints on us in a different way because it's not a memory like we grown-ups sort of process information through. Is it similar, dissimilar to it's like all feeling versus logic? I don't have the ability to logically process events and to think through them, so it just sort of sticks to me.
Yeah, I mean, if you're listening, it could be like, when your partner doesn't call you back and your gut drops to the floor, or when someone says something and it hurts, your heart starts to hurt. Like, so we have different memory centers in
Huh.
our fascia, in our gut, in our heart, and it's more sensational based. I don't know if any of the listeners ever read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, but our body really does hold sensational memory, and we don't think of that as memory, but that memory is so important. And that's a big part of my book is like you're not going to walk away not understanding these concepts and getting in touch with them inside your body. And you're like, oh my God, wow, this is happening in the here and now, and it's activating earlier memory. So let's be with that. Let's learn how to understand that on a deeper level.
How fascinating how you do. We all have those experiences of just this visceral response. My stomach drops, my heart, whatever it is. I think we all connected some experience with that, so that makes a ton of sense. Well, it strikes me that as technology advances, Jessica, and we have robots living in our homes, and we start having relationships with them, that's not going to help our previous relationships, or rather help us to process through a lot of the problems that we have. I think it'll probably exacerbate it, making this work even more important.
100%. It's on this is like off topic, but I talked to ChatGPT. I just started to recently, and I think the reason why people like it's so validating, but it's almost over validating,
Hmm.
and it is missing human connection, what we need most in the world to thrive. But I think because so many people lack human connection and validating people in their life, that when they talk to ChatGPT, they feel like so seen and heard for the first time, but it's so dangerous. It's like a dangerous territory. And some levels, I'm like, it's really supportive. And other levels, I'm like, it could feed you too much information and it's really lacking the face to face and the human to human contact. So it can be deceiving.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it like that, but it makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah.
Definitely seen and responded to exactly what you asked.
Yeah, and actually it does a good job of validating you. I mean,
Eh,
I'm like, this is great, but you have, and for people who have never been validated in their life, it must feel really good. It's just, it's a slippery slope in my opinion, and it's definitely when you understand neuroscience and you understand like interpersonal neurobiology, the most important thing we need to thrive is connection with each other and community. So the scary part for me is it's going to move us away from the one thing that we're biologically all really needing. And we're not even aware that we need this. We need so much more connection that we're actually getting in our culture. So it's going to move us towards a kind of like a false connection. And it's just not how we're designed. We're designed to be in community and more connection and, not living in, apartments and having this like individual life. That's not how we're really designed to thrive.
yeah. So the title of the book is Safe, and I imagine that the idea is how can I feel more safe in my relationships with other people, but I'm sensing, kind of picking up that I need to feel safe in engaging in this work too, because if I don't feel like I'm going to be safe, if I feel like it's going to be too painful, I'm just not going to do it. We already touched a little bit on that, but
Yeah, so I go into the concepts of neuroception and I go into concepts of vulnerability and safety. And so, you know, we can't fake safety. So our nervous system is constantly scanning our environment on an unconscious level. Am I safe or am I unsafe? We are doing this every millisecond, right? And so as I look at you, George, and I see eye contact and we're having a nice conversation, my nervous system is registering a ventral state of safety. There's fluidity between us, there's a sense of safety, we're in nice dialogue. You could roll your eyes, you could pick up your phone, and it could send my system into a sense of not feeling safe. That's how fast we move in and out of a sense of safety. So I talk about that, especially in the context of relationships. I also talk about healing can't happen unless we have a container of safety. So, for implicit memory and memories to really surface, we need to feel safe with each other, or else we're just shifted in this like go, go, go mode or sympathetic activation, or we're more disconnected. So, in safe relationships, and I really dive into like, what is a safe relationship? What does that mean? Where my nervous system registers that I'm fully safe with you, more of our neural nets open and more information around childhood or memory starts to surface when we have safety. So safety is really the catalyst for healing. Um, and it's hard because for me, for example, with my therapist, and I talk about it, when I had a lot of safety with her, it was uncomfortable because she was the first person that was really present for me, and I had to get vulnerable, and I'm like, wow, this is real intimacy. This is what this is about. So for a lot of people in our world, they don't have that. I didn't have that. I didn't really fully understand what that was. Even though I could provide it for other people, I hadn't had it in a deep way myself. So when you experience true safety, and I talk about the science behind that, your work comes up. That's actually when you have the opportunity to heal some of these deeper patterns.
Well, that makes so much sense. And as you were talking, I could think back to interactions where you did feel really safe with people, and it's interesting how fragile that is because anything can sort of knock you out of it, and that's happened. And when we're having a coffee with a new friend or somebody like that, and everything's going great, then all of a sudden something happens. How interesting.
Yeah, and I talk about rupture and repair. So safety isn't about having perfect connection. Safety is about being able to get out of connection. I talk about what that means as an infant and a mother or your primary caregiver, but also as an adult. So it's not about not having conflict. It's not about not stepping out of safety moments. It's about acknowledging them and getting back into safety. So perfect security is not the goal. What we want is we want to trust that our friends and our loved ones care about us and have an inherent sense that they care about us enough that when we're out of sync, we work hard to get back into sync. And that's exactly what a parent does with a baby for secure attachment. And as an adult, it's not that you're perfect, George, or that you don't screw up. It's that I inherently sense that you care about me enough that when you make a mistake, we work to resolve it together. And that's actually what builds more security than a relationship with no disconnection.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Living in a zero gravity environment where there's no friction and nothing, you're not going to grow stronger. You'll atrophy actually and kind of go the opposite direction. So being able to be safe and move out of safety. So that's rupture and then move back, which is the repair.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Those are great terms, rupture and
I
repair.
mean, they're like in the neuroscience, it's 66% of the time rupture and repair. So parents are not expected to be perfect. When a child fusses and you want to say, are they hungry? Are they tired? You work to figure it out. That's rupture. And then the repair is, I'm going to get my needs met. So when you become an adult, it's like when my boyfriend or a girlfriend struggles, we might struggle a little, but then we figure it out. And then so it's this calming around we can struggle and we can figure it out. Not that we can never struggle, right? That's just, impossible and kind of more of a codependency.
That seems like a really, really important idea. And I can't believe I've never heard that those terms, rupture and repair. Obviously, you have conflict and you try to work through it, but it just sounds way better the way you said it.
Yeah, and depending on your childhood, and people like, really? I'm like, how your family handled conflict matters. Because if they didn't, you might be avoidant of it. If they screamed at each other, you might be scared of it. Like all of these things matter when you were small. Did you see your parents handling conflict well? Were you able to negotiate conflict or fights? And was that welcomed, or did everybody just stay quiet and you people please? And so, like, all of those things kind of we learn to survive, we learn to stay in connection, we learn to adapt, and then we bring those adaptations into our adult relationships.
Yeah. It's easy to enjoy the good times, Jessica, but what do you do when things don't go perfect, which is most of the time?
Right, right.
I
Yeah,
love it.
you hope you have the and I talk about the internalization process. So we internalize our parents. We are internalizing each other. The closer the experience, we have mirror neurons. We take each other with each other. We internalize people. And so part of healing insecure attachment is starting to internalize safe people and then resourcing those safe people. So we take that with us. And so we get at any age, we can start to re-internalize safe people and work with people that we've internalized that might have been scary or anxious or unavailable. So we can work with all those parts inside.
I love it. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for coming back on.
Thank you for having me.
Where can people learn more about you? How can they engage? And not most importantly, but also where can they get their copy of Safe Coming Home to Yourself and Others? And I know that there's more in the secondary title, but I have a
Yeah.
hard time reading my handwriting enough as it is, Jessica.
No,
So,
I know it's safe an attachment informed guide to building more secure relationships. I actually I'm gonna send you a link or make sure we get a link. I have a free download. So if you listen to this podcast where you can get a blueprint around the attachment styles and a conversation that I had with my mentor who studies interpersonal neurobiology around what inner security really feels like as you walk through this process. So if you buy the book through the link that you will offer on here, you'll get those free things. I have an Instagram page, Jessica Baum, LMHC. I have a private practice called the Relationship Institute of Palm Beach, and I have a coaching business called the Conscious Relationship Group, where I have a lot of coaches that are working with attachment style issues for those who want to do the healing work. And I'm happy to provide information on how to get this work everywhere and how to start healing. So that's the goal.
excellent. Love it. Well, if you enjoyed this as much as I did, show Jessica your appreciation. Share today's show with a friend who also appreciates good ideas. Learn more about Jessica. There's a lot of different places that I will link in the show in the notes of the show, from her coaching practice um, to her other the Relationship Institute of Palm Beach, which I said South Beach earlier, Jessica. I'm
Mhm, you
sure that that
did.
probably happens, maybe not infrequently, or maybe I'm the first person that's ever done that. Am I the first person who's ever done that?
I think so.
Okay. Way to go, me. And then, of course, find her on Instagram. And then, of course, pick up your copy of Safe using the link that I will put in the notes of the show. And then it'll give you that blueprint on attachment styles as well. So thanks
That
again,
sounds
Jessica.
great. George, thank you so much for having this conversation with me and having me on today. It was so much fun.
Yeah, agreed. And until next time, remember, do your part by doing your best.